everything has just been revealed for the Minnesota Wild, who are heading in to the biggest and most important offseason in franchise history, with extensions needed for Kirill Kaprizov, and what is going to happen with Marco Rossi still unknown. We have a report breaking down everything and giving us a very good insight as to what the Wild are going to be doing in this year's offseason. We're going to be breaking it all down here in this video. Very quickly, before we get into it, be sure to hit the sub button if you haven't already. If you're looking for all of your Wild news into this offseason, we have so much stuff all ready to bring you a day after the Wild have been eliminated. We're going to have so much more when it comes out about the press conference and all of this news. You will not want to miss it, so be sure to go hit that sub button. But without any further ado, let's get into our first topic here, going over Kirill Kaprizov, a man who we know has set this franchise apart, has set this franchise in the right direction, and heading in to the final year of his first NHL extension with the Minnesota Wild. We're going to start this one off here going over what The Athletic had to say about this. Craig Leopold said convincing Kaprizov to stay in Minnesota long-term keeps him up at night and has vowed that nobody will be able to pay him more just by virtue of the fact that the Wild can offer him an 8-year, while 31 other teams would only be able to sign him for a 7-year deal as a free agent on July 1st, 2026. Now, this immediately rings some bells in my mind, going over the kind of the thought process and the history of the Minnesota Wild. We have not seen the Wild franchise be this proactive in going to be re-signing a star player. Kirill Kaprizov has put them in the right direction, of course, and has been the superstar that has set this team apart from where we were to where we now are. And his extension is going to be the main priority heading into this offseason for the Minnesota Wild, for Craig Leopold, for Bill Guerin. Everybody here is going to be doing what they can to go and get Kirill Kaprizov back with this team. And as we know, of course, he's been on an absolute stellar pace for the Wild here over his first few years with this team. And this year was plagued with injuries, and that caused a lot of concern for not just Wild fans, but also Kirill Kaprizov, knowing that that could have hurt his chances at a free agent contract. But when you put that in a Wild perspective, that is very good for them, knowing that if they offer Kirill Kaprizov the money they were going to anyways, that guarantees him that amount of money after his injury, causes no concern for Kaprizov, lets him have that contract, and wanting to have him on this team is the main priority. But when we go look at him, he was on record pace this year, Hart Trophy pace this season with, of course, the injury, and we saw what he did in these playoffs, bounce back, come back into a healthy season, and show what he could have done if it were a full one. So we got to expect Kirill Kaprizov to be bouncing back next year, hopefully under a new contract with the Minnesota Wild. And I think a good idea of this is what Craig Leopold said here. We have to do to prove to him what we want, or that we want to win. And I think this is a big part as well. And I think the one thing that Minnesota Wild fans fear, and what I mentioned in our video yesterday with Josh after the elimination of the Minnesota Wild, that, Kirill Kaprizov may want to see that this team can win before signing a contract. But when you go out and offer him insane amount of money, there are virtues that are going to be able to make that a little bit easier for the Minnesota Wild here on this term. But with Kirill Kaprizov, with his whole stance on this team, it certainly seems like that he wants to be here, and it certainly seems that he is ready to stay here for quite some time. And this is what The Athletic had to say, and brace for this insane contract detail that they have hinted here. Our gut says the Wild will get a deal done, and after all, when you put the 8-year deal worth 120 or 128 million, somewhere in between there as well, on the table this offseason, that type of security right then and there should be awfully enticing for a player who missed half the season due to an injury. So kind of going back at what I just said, looking at the contract and comparing that to the injury, that gives the certainty to Kirill Kaprizov that he is going to be paid and he's going to be a Wild for life. But when you put out, 100 and let's just say 24 right in the middle, or 8 years, that is $15.5 million per season. And it does certainly seem like the Wild are ready to make that happen when it does come down to the contract and what they have ready for this team. Because when we look at the cap projections for next year and this offseason, getting around 14 million, 13 million here worth of dead cap, also the expiring contracts, but the year after around 50 million, which is going to be, about 50%, which is kind of crazy enough, going to Kirill Kaprizov. A little less than that, but, in a major term, it goes to show that he's here for the long run. But we also have quite a few other players that we need to look at, that we need to really kind of think about here in this offseason. Another one, Marco Rossi, someone who has been a major piece to this Minnesota Wild team, someone who has shown that he is ready for the big leagues. But We know he's ready, but does he trust the Minnesota Wild heading into this offseason, heading into his future in the NHL? And this is where we have another part of The Athletic here from Michael Russo and Joe Smith. It's no longer simply, what do the Wild think of Marco Rossi? It's now, what does Marco Rossi think of the Minnesota Wild? Because with what we have saw from him in these playoffs, what we see near the end of the season, one of two players on this team to play all 82 games this season, he showed that he's ready to go. He's going to have a phenomenal NHL career wherever it may be, and we gotta hope it's going to be the Minnesota Wild. He did not get the playing time that he definitely wanted here in these playoffs, sticking on the fourth line for a majority of it with Yakov Trenin, with also Justin Brazeau, and pairing him with those two, certainly is not going to boost the stats around him. It's not going to boost his own stats, and frankly, it's almost a slap in the face to where he thought he should have been in this offseason. Now, I'm a big advocate as well for, having the veteran experience in the playoffs rather than skill at every single point. Skill is certainly important as well, but when you're putting guys like we saw the second line with Marcus Johansson, with Gustav Nyquist, with Freddie Gaudreau, experience like that in those players certainly has more value in these playoffs when you're used to playing at that level. And even though Marco Rossi, full 82-game season here, I still don't think that experience was here for him. And we saw the same with Matt Boldy with Marco Rossi. That's no different from what their first season held as well. But we have to assume that when it does come down to it, Marco Rossi is not happy with where he was. And when we're looking at the offseason projections here, these are some interesting numbers. They have two projections, one of a short-term, one of a long-term. The long-term deal features a $6 by $6.7 million deal for Marco Rossi. And the bottom one there, a 2-year short-term kind of bridge deal at 4.6. And that's courtesy of AFP Analytics. So when we're looking at that, of course, it's all coming down to stats, how he played and whatnot. And that's not really counting in any kind of personal level types of things. So we're going to take these here with that solely skill-based around the NHL, players similar to him types of deals. And I want to know what you guys think right now about these two contracts. Obviously, Marco Rossi is someone that we want to see stick with this team. There's no doubt about that. The way that he's been playing, and although he may only be a third-line center next year, and I could arguably see him going up to second line, and I would start him at the second line with, whoever it may be at that point, whether it's Zuccarello, whether it is going to be, somebody else, Marcus Foligno, whoever it may be, he will fit around that line, and we see success with him on just about every opportunity we gave him here throughout the regular season. So let me know what you think about the contract for Marco Rossi. Would you get with any of these deals? Do you have something else in mind? Let me know what you think the Wild should do with that here in the comments below. But we do have one more kind of idea here when we head to it about the offseason for the Minnesota Wild, and we know that we have a lot of internal things that we need to clean up, we need to fix, but the opportunity the Wild have right now is one of the biggest in franchise history, and that is the offseason. The offseason, heading into free agency in specific, with the money they have, has been something the Wild have not been given the opportunity to with these buyouts over the past, 3, 4, 5 years even. With those two under contract, we now see the abilities that the Wild have to make with this open amount of money. And when it does come down to where we are, where we stand on the contract side of things, we know that the depth needs to get better on this team. We see Ryan Hartman, we see Marcus Foligno, some $4 million guys who necessarily are not $4 million when it comes down to their stats, what they do on paper, but when we see them on the ice, they are certainly worth that amount of money. Matt Zuccarello at 38 years old, still putting up the points he did, pairing him with whether it be Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek, Boldy, Rossi, whoever it may be. Those are deserving contracts for these guys. But when you go down to the bottom six here, Liam Ogren, a guy that still has never really had the chance. He's getting back into this rhythm now. Hopefully we'll see him full-time next year with, a Yakov Trenin, a bit of a high contract right there. Freddie Gaudreau, 2.1, a phenomenal contract for how he plays and what his role is on this team. The Wild need to get a lot of depth scoring so that teams are not targeting the top line, specifically in this playoffs like we saw with Vegas, targeting that top line of Boldy, Eriksson Ek, and Kaprizov, and it really be able to open up the scoring on all lines rather than having one line shut down and seemingly being stuck in the mud with this Minnesota Wild team. And we've been speaking about a few free agents possible over the past few videos that we've done. The possibility of a Brock Besser is there. I don't think that may be the only good option. I think there's a few other ones, but it'll all depend on what the Wild want to do as well internally heading into free agency. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be discussed, and it's going to be something for a later day, but also a little bit here as well when we head into it. And I'll pull this up once again, the cap space that we're going to be having and heading into next season, with quite a bit of this going as well to our internal players, just like Brock Faber's $8.5 million contract kicking in and having to prepare some money for Kirill Kaprizov in the future year. But we have a lot of money that we can spend elsewhere for the first time. We have a lot of money that's going to be spent inside the team, and I'm excited to see where this Wild team goes with this money when we're looking at these offense here. And of course, the defense looking pretty good so far. I think the Wild have a lot of opportunity to really make this team a lot better in this offseason. So let me know what you think in the comments below. First of all, about Kirill Kaprizov. Second of all, about Marco RossI. And third of all, do you want to see any free agents available in this season that are going to be in the Wild next year? Let me know what you think about all that stuff there in the comments below. That's all I got in this video. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well, but I'm signing out. And remember, we have a lot of stuff coming throughout this Minnesota Wild offseason. It's going to be a very important one, so you will not want to miss it. Like I said, that's all I got. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.